"Grandma, call the police. Don't let anyone know it was me." The tiny note slid past my knee just as Tyler, my son, raised his glass for a toast. My daughter-in-law smiled sweetly and poured more water into my glass. I lifted it to my lips and tasted a metallic bitterness curling on my tongue. I had no idea that behind that glass of water lay a secret about to wreck my life. I'm Ruth Ann Delaney, 68 years old, and I've spent my whole life in a small house in the suburbs of Austin, Texas. This home is the result of 45 years of nonstop work by me and my husband, Frank. So many sweltering summers with the A divided by C running around the clock, so many winters with the wood stove lit, pinching every penny to pay off the mortgage. To me, this house isn't just four walls, it's the memories of an entire lifetime. And yet here I am, in our familiar dining room under warm yellow light, holding a trembling note from my 8-year-old granddaughter, Lily. She sat across from me, eyes fixed on her plate, her small hands shaking around her fork. She had just saved me, or at least tried. Tyler, my only son, was pouring red wine into Frank's glass. His voice rang out, "I think it's time we talked about the family's future, Mom." "The future?" I looked straight at him, trying to stay calm while my heart pounded. Brooke, his wife, set her glass down, took his hand, and said in a syrupy voice, "We just want what's best for you and for Dad Frank, too. You're both getting old, and this house is too big to keep up much longer. It would make more sense to transfer it to us. Think of it as an early inheritance." I clenched the note inside my sleeve, careful not to show any reaction. The water in the glass in front of me still gave off that faint, unpleasant smell. I'd taken the first sip and noticed something off. Now Lily's note confirmed my fear. Frank looked up, surprised. "What's wrong with this house? I still mow the lawn every week, and Ruth keeps everything spotless." Tyler gave a strained smile, then dodged. "Dad, shouldn't we plan ahead? Transfer papers, future health care. I know an attorney who specializes in family assets and can make everything neat and tidy." I swallowed hard. "Your attorney. Not mine. Not an independent one." It all felt carefully planned. Brooke cut in. "Actually, Ruth, I already reached out to a well-known geriatric doctor. He can evaluate your mental health, just to be sure everything's fine." "Totally routine." I forced a smile. In my head, loose pieces started to click together. They talked about the future, transfer, mental evaluation. All of it pointed to one goal: turn me into an incapacitated old woman so they could control the house and the money. I looked at Lily. She glanced up for a split second, eyes full of fear, then dropped her gaze. I knew she had seen something. I knew she was trying to save me while her parents, my own son and daughter-in-law, were running a scheme at my table. I set my fork down like nothing was wrong, dabbed my mouth with a napkin, and said softly, "Excuse me, I need to use the restroom." In the bathroom, I turned on the faucet, rinsed my mouth hard, and spat into the sink. I opened a contact lens case in my purse and carefully dripped the leftover water from my mouth into it. I snapped it shut and hid it at the bottom of my bag. A piece of evidence. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back had neatly kept gray hair and clear eyes, but something was different, a slight tremble at the corner of my mouth. I whispered to myself, "Be strong, Ruth. Don't tip your hand." Back at the table, I sat down and acted like nothing had happened. Brooke smiled and went to pour more water into my glass. I put my hand over it and stopped her. "Thanks, but I think I've had enough." Her smile faltered, then slid back into place. Tyler picked up his speech again about the benefits of planning early, about how sensible it is for older folks to pass assets to the next generation. I nodded as if I were considering it. Meanwhile, every word landed in my ears like a stone. Frank still believed in our son's good intentions. He nodded absently and said we should probably plan a little. Under the table, I squeezed his hand hard. He turned to me, saw the worry on my face, and fell silent. I took a few more bites of chicken, pretending not to notice. But my mind was racing. Lily had risked slipping me that note. She must have seen them do something to the food or the drinks, or overheard their plan. I couldn't let her courage be wasted. As the meal was ending, Tyler suddenly said, "Next week, Mom, can you come with me to see Dr. Harold Benton? He's very reputable." Just a simple evaluation. I gave the gentlest smile I could manage. "Oh, if you think so, I'll consider it. But for today, let me enjoy a family meal." Brooke shot a quick look at her husband, then back at me, a flash of caution in her eyes. They didn't fully buy that I was fooled. That didn't matter. I just needed them to think I was weak and naive. That was the only way to lead them into their own trap. Frank got up to grab dessert while I stayed seated, watching Lily. She looked up, her big eyes pleading. I gave a tiny nod as if to say, "I understand." Inside me, a resolve rose. They wanted me to be a confused old woman? Fine, I'd play the part. But I would remember every word, every detail, every piece of proof. That night, after we cleaned up, I tucked the lens case with the water sample into a locked cabinet. Frank asked, "You seem tired. Is something wrong?" I smiled and rested my hand on his shoulder. "Just a little headache. I'll tell you everything tomorrow. For now, get some sleep." He kissed my forehead and went to bed. I stayed in the living room, the warm lamp casting a long shadow across the wall. I unfolded the note again and read Lily's shaky words over and over. "Grandma, call the police. Don't let anyone know it was me." An 8-year-old was that brave. I, a woman pushing 70, who'd weathered a lifetime, couldn't let her fight alone. I drew a deep breath and closed my eyes. This battle was only beginning. The next morning, I woke as sunlight slipped through the cream curtains. Frank was still snoring softly beside me, his face peaceful. I sat up and looked around our familiar room, every family photo on the wall, proof of a lifetime of sacrifice. And yet now, the very people I raised wanted to take it all. I brewed a strong pot of coffee and poured it into an old chipped mug. The bitterness cleared my head. I replayed every word from the night before. Brooke's narrowed eyes, Tyler's forced smile. They didn't want to help me. They were building a script to turn me into a useless old woman. That noon, I called Tyler and kept my voice light. "Son, I thought about last night. Maybe we should sit down and talk properly about the house. I don't want any misunderstandings in the family." On the other end, his voice brightened like he'd been waiting for this. "I knew you'd understand." "Brooke and I will come by tonight and we'll go over everything." I agreed and told Frank to let me do the talking. He studied me but finally nodded. He's gentle, and he believes that if a family talks honestly, any problem can be fixed. I knew better. Faced with greed, nice words are a thin curtain. That evening, when the clock chimed 7, Tyler and Brooke came in carrying a thick stack of papers. Brooke set them neatly on the living room table, sat up straight, and wore an oddly confident look. Tyler tried to act casual, but his hand kept spinning a pen. "This is a preliminary proposal," Brooke began smoothly, like she was selling insurance. "You and Dad transfer the title of this house to us, and in return we'll cover all care costs, medical, medications, hospital if needed. Basically, you don't lose anything. It's just an early inheritance. All very reasonable, legally and emotionally." I picked up the stack and skimmed the tiny print. Gift deed, durable power of attorney, guardianship responsibility. Those cold terms sounded like a sentence on my life. Frank squinted, not quite following. I set the papers down and smiled calmly. "An early inheritance. That's clever. But let me ask, do you think this house is just an asset?" Tyler hesitated, but Brooke jumped in. "Ruth, we have to be realistic. This house is about 3,000 square feet, and it's wasteful for just 2 people. Maintenance, property taxes, utilities, they all add up. You could move to a smaller, easier place." And Lily would have a better future. Isn't that what you've always wanted? I gave a thin smile, my stomach tight. They dragged Lily into it again, using her as a shield for their greed. They forgot I'm the one who bought her notebooks and shoes when they said they were short on cash. They forgot who sat up all night when she had the flu while they were busy elsewhere. I looked my son in the eyes. Tyler, do you remember what this house is? It's where you grew up. Where your daughter cried her first cry. Every brick has your father's sweat in it. I can't treat it like a commodity to sign away. Tyler avoided my gaze, his voice lowering. I know, but you should think about the future. We're having some financial trouble. If we don't fix it, we'll lose everything. Do you want your granddaughter to suffer? I stared at the grown man I once cradled. Now he was pressuring his mother to give up her home to prop up his instability. I asked softly, "What kind of trouble?" "What debts?" Tyler pressed his lips together and dodged. Brooke squeezed his hand and said curtly, "That's not the point. The point is we have a solution. If you sign, everything will be fine." Frank sighed and looked at me. He wanted peace. I didn't. I stood, went to the cabinet, and pulled out an old photo album. On the cover, in my handwriting from 30 years ago, the Delaney family. I opened it Tyler's 10th birthday, the Colorado trip, his wedding day. I set the album on top of Brooke's papers and looked at them both. See this? This is why I won't sign anything. This house holds all of it. If you want a better future for Lily, build it yourselves. Don't strip your parents' memories to buy your own comfort. The air turned heavy. Brooke forced a smile and tried one last pitch. Ruth, I get that you're attached, but you have to be practical. Older people can get emotional. We just want to ease your burden. Trust us. I answered, firm. Trust doesn't come from shoving papers in someone's face. It comes from actions. And today, you lost mine. Tyler clenched the pen, his face flushing. Brooke shot him a look to keep quiet. She gathered the papers and gave a thin laugh. We'll give you more time. Please think it over. No need to make this tense. They left, and the room fell into silence. Frank rubbed his temples and shook his head. I don't understand how they changed like this. Tyler wasn't like this before. I set my hand on his shoulder. When greed leads the way, people do things you wouldn't believe. But I won't let them take everything. That night, I set Lily's note next to the stack of papers. 2 small things, but they weighed like stones on my chest. One was a child's cry for help. The other was a death sentence for my life's memories. I knew this fight wasn't over. It was only the prelude. And I, Ruth Ann Delaney, would have to learn to fight not with fists, but with a clear head, evidence, and the hard-earned wisdom of a woman who's lived nearly 7 decades. I took a deep breath, turned off the light, and let the house settle into its familiar darkness. Inside me, a flame had just been lit. The next Sunday, Tyler and Brooke came again as if nothing had happened. They rang right on time, carrying a box of fancy pastries from a downtown shop, smiling wide. I opened the door with a stiff smile, hiding my guard. Frank welcomed them in, unsuspecting. Dinner went the same as usual. Brooke moved quickly in the kitchen and brought out 2 glass pitchers, one clear with plain water and a pale green one with thin lemon slices floating. You like lemon water, so I made this just for you, she said, voice sweet as honey. I sat down at the table and caught the brief tension in Brooke's eyes as she set the green pitcher right in front of me. Tyler glanced over, then pretended to ask Frank about the weather. I picked up my glass and poured a little from the green pitcher. The moment I took a sip, a faint bitterness crept over my tongue. Not lemon. Not a hint of salt. It was the taste of deceit. My heart slowed for a few seconds. I set the glass down and pretended to dab my mouth with a napkin. My eyes met Lily's. She sat across from me, her fork tapping lightly on the plate like a signal. I gave the slightest nod to steady her. All through the meal, Tyler kept checking on me with leading questions. Mom, do you remember what we talked about last time about the future? Or, Mom, have you been misplacing things around the house lately? I smiled and answered vaguely. On the outside, I was a slightly forgetful older mom. On the inside, I was carving every detail into memory. Frank ate contentedly, unaware that my glass was nothing like the one in his hand. Brooke skillfully poured for everyone from the clear pitcher, only I got the special green one. Once, Frank reached for it by accident, and Brooke switched in a flash. That's for Ruth only, I'll pour you the regular. I wanted to shout, to flip the table and confront them, but I knew it wasn't time. I needed evidence. I needed the truth laid out so clearly no one could deny it. After the meal, I faked a yawn and said I was tired. Tyler jumped in. See, Mom? You've been worn out more lately. I think that appointment with Dr. Benton is really important. Frank frowned. Everyone gets tired at any age. But Tyler ignored him and turned to me. Mom, please say yes. It's just a checkup, nothing more. I gave a small nod, my voice faint. Okay, I'll think about it. When they left, I quickly gathered my glass, wrapped it in foil, and hid it in the kitchen cabinet. My heart was pounding. I didn't want Frank to worry, but he had already stepped out to trim the rose bushes. I took the chance to jot everything down. Date, time, who was present, odd behaviors, strange tastes. That night I lay awake. The image of Lily bowing her head quietly wouldn't leave me. An 8-year-old shouldn't know this kind of fear. She should only be thinking about dolls, homework, and field trips. Instead, she had to watch her parents scheme to poison her grandmother. I told myself, Ruth, you don't get to fall apart, not just for you, for Lily. The next week it happened again. Brooke brought the special water just for me. This time, I only touched the glass to my lips, let it brush my tongue, then set it down. I smiled. Tastes good, thanks, honey. Meanwhile, I secretly used a spoon to skim a little and poured it into a small glass vial hidden in my pocket. Quick and clean, no one would notice. After the meal, I pretended to be confused, asking the same things again. Tyler and Brooke exchanged looks, a faint smile flickering. I wanted them to believe I was slipping so they'd push harder. The harder they pushed, the easier it would be to collect proof. Frank started to worry. That evening he asked, Ruth, are you okay? You asked the same question 3 times today. I held his hand. Do you trust me? Of course. But I'm scared. Let them think that for now. I need more time. He looked at me, silent, then nodded. Trust shone in his eyes. I knew I wasn't alone. The next day, while I was tidying the kitchen, I heard Lily whisper from the porch, Grandma. I stepped out and saw her standing there, eyes red. She whispered, I saw my mom put something in the water pitcher. I'm really scared. I bent down and hugged her tight. It's okay, Lily. You've done the bravest thing. I'll protect you. She nodded and hurried back to the car when Brooke called out. I watched her go, my chest tight. I swore I wouldn't let them hurt this child. That evening, I took out the 2 glasses I'd saved. Under the kitchen light, I could see a thin residue at the bottom, almost clear but strange. I took photos, filed them, and wrote a detailed journal entry. Sitting alone, I suddenly remembered when Tyler was little, toddling around the yard, laughing out loud. I once dreamed he'd grow up kind and family-loving. The man in front of me now felt like a stranger. Did I fail in raising him, or did greed turn him into someone else? I wiped my tears and breathed deep. I wasn't allowed to be soft. If I collapsed, they'd win. If I stayed silent, Lily would think courage is pointless. I couldn't let that happen. Late at night, after Frank fell asleep, I stepped onto the porch. The Texas sky glittered with stars, and the breeze carried the smell of fresh-cut grass. I closed my eyes and let myself settle. I remembered my mother's words. Sweetheart, sometimes silence is the strongest weapon. Wait for the right moment, you'll know when to speak. I knew that moment hadn't come, but it was close, very close. That's when I decided I needed an ally who understood the law and this kind of game. I couldn't face a carefully planned scheme alone. But until I found that ally, I had to keep my role flawless. A forgetful, easily led old woman. They wanted me to drink their bitter water? I'd drink it, but I'd save. Every drop. They wanted me to forget? I'd pretend to forget, but in my mind, every detail would be razor sharp. I went back to bed and lay beside Frank. He shifted and wrapped his arm around me in sleep. I listened to his heartbeat and promised myself, I'll protect him, protect Lily, and protect this home even if I have to fight with every clear thought I have left. The quiet war had begun, and I knew each bitter glass would be the evidence I'd use to defeat them. One weekday morning while I was working in the backyard, Tyler called. He tried to sound casual, but there was an edge. "Mom, I got us an appointment with Dr. Harold Benton. He's famous top geriatric specialist. This Friday afternoon, come with me, okay?" Just a simple evaluation. I froze, pruning shears still in my hand. The roses glowed in the sun, but inside me everything turned slate gray. I took a long breath and kept my voice even. "All right, I'll make arrangements." I knew this was the next step in their plan, and I was ready to step onto their chessboard. On Friday morning, Brooke drove me and Tyler to a clinic in a fancy downtown building. A polished brass plaque outside read, "Dr. Harold Benton, Geriatrics Specialist." The hallway was thickly carpeted, with a faint scent of peppermint oil. I looked around, everything designed to make patients feel safe. We were led into a large room, walls covered with framed awards and certificates. Dr. Benton appeared tall, neatly combed silver hair, warm and slow voice. He shook my hand with a kindly smile, then flicked a quick glance at Tyler and Brooke. I caught that quiet look of familiarity. "Mrs. Delaney," he said, "today we'll do a few small tests, just to check memory and attention. Won't take long." I nodded and sat across from him. Tyler set his bag down and readied his phone. Brooke sat close, hands clasped, eyes full of expectation. Dr. Benton started with simple questions. "What's today's date? What month? Do you remember what year it is?" I answered clearly, but intentionally got one weekday wrong. Tyler jumped in. "See? I told you, Mom mixes up days and times." I gave a sheepish smile. "Maybe I got it mixed up." He moved on to short memory tests. He read 3 simple words, pencil, clock, apple, and asked me to repeat them a few minutes later. I repeated them exactly, then forgot one the next time. Brooke sighed, squeezing Tyler's hand, pretending concern. "Doctor," she said, "she's been like this for months. Sometimes she remembers, sometimes she doesn't. We're really worried." Frank came along that day, sitting quietly in the corner. He lifted his head, voice steady. "At home, Ruth handles everything. Cooking, tidying, paying bills, nothing about her is confused." Dr. Benton turned to Frank, smiled politely, and cut him off. People who live together often miss gradual decline. Sometimes love makes us overlook clear signs. I stayed silent, hands resting on my lap, the tiny recorder Monica gave me hidden in my pocket. Every word, every sigh was being captured. The doctor kept going. "Do you often feel tired, misplace items, or suspect family members of taking things?" I pretended to think, then answered softly, Sometimes I forget where I put my keys. As for suspecting anyone, I'm not sure." Tyler jumped right in. "Exactly. Once she said her checkbook was missing and blamed us. She'd just hidden it too well and forgot." I looked at my son with damp eyes to sell the weakness. Inside, my heart was a fireball. "At the end, Doctor Benton scribbled notes and said, "I'll compile the results and can prepare a medical report. That report would be helpful if the family needs legal support for long-term care." Those words cut like a blade. Legal support was the key for Tyler and Brooke to seize control of assets. I smiled blankly and asked, "What does legal mean? Doctor?" He smiled kindly. "Just procedures to ensure your best interests." I nodded as if I didn't understand, but in my pocket, the recorder had kept every word. Outside the clinic, Brooke took my arm, voice sweet. "See, Mom? Easy, right? I think we should take a few more steps to be sure you're cared for." I smiled and murmured, "All right, you two handle it." Tyler drove home looking satisfied. Frank sat beside me and gently squeezed my hand. I knew he'd heard and understood, but it wasn't the moment to speak. Back home, I went to my room and locked the door. I replayed the recording. Benton's voice was clear. "Prepare a medical report, helpful for legal purposes." I wrote down the date and time and saved a copy to the clean phone Monica had set up. I sat in the chair, my hands trembling not from fear, but from seeing how carefully they'd staged this. From the bitter water to the top doctor, every piece was a chess move they planned. They didn't know I was playing too. That night, I told Frank everything. He went still, gripping my hand, eyes reddening. "I can't believe our son would go this far." I cupped his cheek and said firmly, "Frank, we don't have a choice anymore. If we stay quiet, they take it all. If we fight back, at least the truth stays ours." He nodded and held my hand tighter. And I knew from that moment on, we would walk into this battle together, however long and hard it would be. The next day, I met with Monica. I brought the recording and described the entire exam in detail. Monica listened, eyes sharp as a blade, then said, "Exactly what I expected. They're building a file to petition for guardianship, but now we have evidence. The doctor is biased and even brought up legal procedures on his own. That's a dangerous sign, but also an opening to strike back." I exhaled, seeing a faint glimmer of hope. I had stepped into their trap, but at the same time I'd set one for them. That night, I sat by the window and looked out at the rose garden. Moonlight fell like silver over the petals, a reminder to be patient and steady. I thought of Lily, of her pleading eyes asking me to believe her. I thought of Frank, of his calloused hands after so many years of work. I knew I had to see this through, and I knew Doctor. Benton wasn't the last link in this chain, but at least I had a first piece of evidence to use against them. A vow rose in me. They want to paint me as confused. I'll show them just how sharp a mother's memory can be. Monica didn't keep me waiting. The next morning, she called and asked me to swing by her small office in the Austin suburbs. The old red brick building had a modest sign out front. "Monica Alvarez, private investigator." Inside, the air smelled faintly of fresh coffee. Maps, notes, and photos covered the walls. I sat on a wooden chair, feeling both unfamiliar and safe. Monica carried a calm presence, her deep brown eyes like they could see through layers of lies. "I listened to your recording," she said firmly. "It's enough to show Dr. Benton isn't neutral, but we need more. If Tyler and Brooke file for guardianship, the court will demand proof you're not competent. They'll bring video, a fake medical report, and witnesses." I nodded, my heart pinching at the word guardianship. The thought of losing control over my own life still made me shudder. Monica went on, "The key is flipping the board. We have to show they're staging it. I want to plant audio devices in your home right where they usually sit. If they say anything incriminating, we'll have it." I was quiet for a moment, then smiled slightly. "I've been waiting to hear that. I'm ready." That afternoon, Monica, Frank, and I prepped in silence. She brought 3 tiny recorders, no bigger than a thumb, that could be mounted under a table, behind a cabinet, or inside a dummy outlet. Handy as ever, Frank helped. Hide them in the dining room, living room, and hallway. While we worked, Monica looked at me with both admiration and resolve. "Mrs. Delaney, not everyone your age would dare do this. Remember, the calmer you are, the sloppier they'll get." I gave a thin smile. "I've played the confused old lady long enough. Let's see who's really losing their mind." Frank squeezed my hand without a word, and I felt his strength flow into me. The plan was this. On Sunday, Tyler and Brooke would show up like everything was normal. They'd do the same routine, bring food, talk sweetly, then quietly try to get me to drink that bitter water. This time, Monica would be close by, in a car down the street, ready if I signaled. I still had a tremor of nerves, but I could feel my blood heating. I knew I was walking a tightrope. One misstep and I'd fall into their hands. But now I had more than Frank behind me. I had a real ally. Late that night, after Frank slept, I wrote in my journal. My pen shook, but each word was clear. "If tomorrow I'm no longer clear-headed, remember that I fought. Tyler isn't the boy who once called me hero mom. Brooke was never truly my daughter. But Lily is still the light. For her, I'm not allowed to fall." I closed the journal and told myself, tomorrow, the game truly begins. Sunday came with a low Texas sky, heavy clouds like an omen. I set the table with my white china, the set I only bring out for special occasions. Frank stood on the porch pretending to read the paper, really keeping watch. Right at 11:30, Tyler and Brooke arrived. They carried a basket of food, the smell of roast chicken and mashed potatoes filling the house. Brooke kissed my cheek, her sweetness dripping with artifice. "You look much better than last week," she said. I smiled gently and murmured, "Thanks to you two, caring so much." Inside, I felt sick at how sweet my own voice sounded. But I knew I had to play the part. When they sat down, Lily came in behind them, her face bright but her eyes still shadowed with worry. She glanced at me, as if to ask, "Is everything okay?" I smiled and nodded, hoping she'd understand I was ready. As Tyler poured water, I noticed the same habit, 2 separate pitchers. He held a gleaming silver one and poured only into my glass. Brooke shot him a quick look, discreet, but enough for me to see they were in on it together. I lifted my glass and took a tiny sip. The familiar bitterness crawled across my tongue, and a chill ran through me. I made a small face and set the glass down, murmuring, "I guess herbal tea isn't for me." Brooke laughed. "Oh, you're just too sensitive." I looked straight into her eyes but kept that soft smile. Under the table, the recorder was catching every word. Throughout the meal, I let myself seem distracted, asking the same questions again. "What day is it today?" "Oh, I forgot. Who made this dish?" Tyler and Brooke shared pleased looks. Frank stayed silent, but I knew he was gritting his teeth. And Monica surely in the car outside, headphones on listening to every sound. After dessert, Brooke set a hand on my shoulder. "Mom, we think it's time to seriously talk about the future. Some things are better prepared early." I tilted my head and spoke slowly. "You mean a nursing home?" Both Tyler and Brooke answered together. "Not a nursing home, Mom, a specialized care center." I nodded, feigning confusion. "And what happens to the house?" Tyler cleared his throat. "We'll handle it. Sell the house to cover the costs. You won't have to worry about a thing." My chest tightened, but on the outside I just gave a small smile. "You two are so thoughtful." When they were getting ready to leave, I walked them to the door and gave Lily's hand a quick squeeze. She looked up at me, eyes bright, and I knew she understood something important had just been recorded. With the door closed, I sank into a chair. Frank came over and hugged me tight. "Ruth, you acted so well I almost believed it." I smiled, eyes stinging. "It's not acting, Frank. It's surviving." Outside, the Texas sky began to clear, sunlight peeking through. I felt a small light inside me, too faint but real, because today I wasn't alone. I had Monica, I had Frank, I had Lily, and most importantly, I had the first proof of a truth they'd tried to hide. After that Sunday lunch, once Tyler and Brooke had gone, Frank and I sat in the living room. The house was quiet, but the smell of roast chicken lingered along with a faint, bitter scent from the glass I hadn't finished. I looked down and saw a pale white ring at the bottom. My heart lurched. This was the key. Carefully, I carried the glass to the kitchen, rinsed the oily rim under the faucet, then used a spoon to scrape the residue into a clear plastic bag. Frank stood behind me, tense. "Are you sure that's enough?" I nodded. "A little is enough to prove it." That night, I called Monica. She listened in silence, then said briskly, "Take the sample to an independent lab. I'll arrange a trusted analyst. You need results as soon as possible before they push out Benton's report." The next morning, Frank and I drove to a modest building in an industrial area on the south side of town. The sign out front read, "Austin Independent Forensic Lab." Inside, white neon lights shone on spotless tile. The chill of the place made me clutch the bag like it was precious. A silver-haired woman in a white coat greeted us. "I'm Dr. Lorraine. We often work with attorneys in civil disputes. Rest assured, everything here is strictly confidential." I set the bag on the table, my voice a little shaky. "Please test this. I think there's a drug in it." Lorraine pulled on gloves, held the sample under a light, then nodded. "We'll run gas chromatography and mass spectrometry. If there's a sedative or sleep aid, we'll find it." We signed the forms and paid in cash. She said, "You'll have a preliminary result in 48 hours. Leaving the lab, I felt lighter and more afraid at the same time. Tyler and Brooke were surely moving to the next step. I didn't have much time. That night, I tossed and turned, haunted by the bitterness on my tongue. That thin, chalky taste clung like a ghost. I saw Brooke's sweet smile and the silver pitcher tilting over my glass. I saw Tyler's sideways glance, the two of them performing a play where I was the only one not allowed to see the script. In the dark, Frank found my hand. "We'll get through this," he whispered. "Trust me." 2 days later, I went back to the lab. Lorraine handed me a thick envelope, her eyes steady, her voice firm. "The residue contains a high level of zolpidem, a strong sleep medication. Repeated doses cause confusion, short-term memory loss, even hallucinations. At your age, the effects are even more severe." My head hummed. Every suspicion was now ink on paper. Lorraine rested a hand on my shoulder. "This report has legal standing. If needed, I'll testify." I clutched the envelope to my chest, trembling with both fear and pride. They wanted to make me the confused one, but the smell of that sleeping pill in my glass had become proof that I was clear-headed enough to expose their scam. That afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table and opened the envelope again. The clinical words were cold, but to me they read like a declaration. I heard Tyler's voice. "Mom, have you forgotten again? You're always mixing things up." I heard Brooke's thin laugh. "That's how older people are, Mom." I gripped the report and whispered, "No, I never forgot. And you'll remember this for the rest of your lives." Frank sat beside me, his hand trembling as he rested it on my back. "We've got evidence now, Ruth. Time to let Monica know." I nodded, but deep down I knew. This was only the beginning. Tyler and Brooke wouldn't give up easily. I had to brace for a bigger fight. That evening, Monica came over. I spread the results on the table. She read carefully, eyes lighting up. "Perfect. This is the piece we needed. The sleep medication matches the symptoms they tried to manufacture. Now there's one step left. Record them admitting it." I sighed. "Can we really get that? They're careful." Monica's smile turned cool. "Everyone slips when they think they're winning. Be patient. We'll make them expose themselves." Late that night, after the house went quiet, I opened the cabinet and placed the report in a hidden compartment where I keep my most precious things: my wedding ring, our wedding photo, and a small handwritten notebook. I sat down and wrote one more line. Today I learned for sure they put a sleeping drug in my water. But I'm still clear, I still remember, and I won't let this truth be buried. When I closed the journal, I looked up at the window. Outside, the Texas night was quiet, the wind lightly stirring the old oak branches. I promised myself, from now on every passing breeze will remind me never to forget, protect myself, and protect Lily. The next Sunday, the Texas sky was unusually clear. Sunlight poured down, making my rose garden shimmer like a painting. But inside me an undercurrent was rising. This was not an ordinary day. This was the day Monica and I would cast our net. Early that morning, Frank helped me set the table. A crisp white tablecloth, blue-rimmed china, and crystal glasses glittering in the light. I wanted everything to look calm, like a warm family meal, but beneath it was a meticulous plan. Monica arrived early, disguised as a phone maintenance tech, carrying a tool bag. Quick and efficient, she placed another recorder under the dining table and hid a tiny camera in a potted plant by the wall. I looked at her, my heart swelling with gratitude. I had never felt so protected. "Just act like you always do," Monica instructed, steady and firm. "Let them think you're weak and confused. Their confidence will make them sloppy." I nodded, my heart pounding. Right at noon, Tyler and Brooke showed up like the model couple. They brought a tray of food. The smell of grilled beef filled the house. Lily followed, her eyes shining, though I could still see a hint of worry there. I gave a small nod as if to say, "We're okay, sweetheart." Brooke laid out the food quickly, her gentle smile a little too perfect, like a mask. Tyler poured drinks, keeping his old habit. One pitcher for everyone, and a shiny silver pitcher for my glass only. I deliberately tracked his hand and asked, "Tyler, why are you using two different pitchers?" He froze for half a second, then forced a smile. One filtered, one regular, Mom. You're sensitive to the tap water smell." I feigned a shy smile, but inside I put another red checkmark in my plan. We started eating. I let myself seem spacey, sometimes repeating questions. "What day is it today?" Or, "Did you make this, Brooke?" Each time, Brooke glanced at Tyler with a satisfied look. They believed I was truly slipping. When dessert came out, Tyler placed his hand on the table and put on a syrupy tone. "Mom, we've thought about this a lot. Your condition is getting more obvious. Maybe it's time to consider a specialized care center." Brooke followed softly. "There, you'd have doctors watching over you around the clock. We'd all feel better. As for this house, we'll handle it, sell it to cover the costs. You won't need to worry." My heart tightened, but on the surface I let my voice tremble. "This house? Sell it?" "But the memories." Tyler took my hand, eyes like a predator hidden under a mild face. "Mom, it's just four walls. What matters is keeping you safe." Right then, I leaned back and sighed. Maybe you're right. But lately something's been strange. Every time I drink water at this table, I feel heavy, foggy. "What do you two think that is?" The room froze. Brooke rushed a laugh, her voice tight. "Oh, you're just sensitive." "It's probably your age." I turned my glass in my hand and deliberately stared at the silver pitcher. Strange. Only the water from this pitcher tastes bitter. "Frank, do you notice it?" Frank looked up, eyes serious. "Yes, I've seen you make a face after you drink." Tyler cut in fast. "That's just in Mom's head. We only want her healthy." I stayed quiet for a few seconds, then nodded lightly. In my head, maybe. But inside, I knew every word had just been captured. After the meal, while everyone still sat at the table, Brooke dropped a line that chilled me. "If Mom keeps going like this, just a few more times and Dr. Benton will have enough to conclude. Then Mom will be legally protected." I looked up, playing dumb. Protected? What does that mean? Tyler smiled weakly. Just paperwork, Mom. So we can manage everything for you. In that moment, I knew the trap had snapped shut. They didn't realize they'd just confessed. Lily, who had been silent the whole time, suddenly spoke, voice shaky but firm. I heard it. Last week, Mom told Dad they needed to give Grandma medicine so she'd get more confused. Don't say I made it up. The table went dead quiet. Brooke went pale. Tyler snapped. Lily, don't talk nonsense. You don't understand anything. But I looked at my granddaughter and smiled with pride. In those clear eyes, I saw the courage I was clinging to. When Tyler and Brooke scrambled to clean up and leave, I stood still, watching the door close. In my pocket, the recorder's tiny red light still blinked. The net had been pulled in, and the fish were beached. Frank wrapped his arm around my shoulders. Ruth, you did so well. I've never seen you this strong. I looked up at him, my voice tight. Not for me, Frank. For Lily. She risked herself to save us. Now it's our turn to protect her. On the porch, the afternoon sun stretched long shadows from the oak. I knew the battle wasn't over, but for the first time, I felt the scale tipping my way. I thought Tyler and Brooke might get cautious after that Sunday meal, maybe even back off a bit. But just 2 days later, a thick envelope arrived at the house, embossed with the seal of a downtown Austin law firm. Frank brought it in, set it in front of me, worry in his eyes. Ruth, brace yourself. Looks like they've started. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a formal notice. Tyler and Brooke were filing for emergency guardianship, claiming I had cognitive decline and could no longer make my own financial or medical decisions. They listed their evidence, the video of me pretending to be confused, and a preliminary report from Dr. Benton. Reading it, I felt blood rush to my face. Each word was a blade. Cognitive decline? I still remember every number, every face in my life. I even remember the smell of the sleeping pill in the water they poured. Yet on paper, they'd turned me into a helpless paranoid. Frank set his hand on my shoulder, voice low. This is when we strike back. That afternoon, I met Monica at her small office. She read the letter and gave a cold smile. Exactly as predicted. They think you're weak enough to corner, but really, they're stepping onto a dangerous line. Monica pulled a small black USB drive from her pocket. Here's Sunday's recording. Brooke mentions giving medicine so Mom gets more confused. Combined with the lab's sleep meta-analysis, we've got a spear in hand. Now we just pick the right moment to drive it home. I gripped the USB, shaking but fired up. I'd spent a lifetime avoiding conflict, wanting peace at home. Now I had to fight like a soldier. 2 days later, we were called to the first hearing at the county courthouse. Wide halls, high ceilings, long wooden benches, it felt sacred and cold all at once. Tyler and Brooke were already there, dressed neatly, faces set like dutiful children worried about their mother. When their eyes met mine, the pretense slipped for an instant, and I saw the icy hate underneath. I didn't look away. I told myself, you chose this road. I'll see it through. The hearing opened, and their attorney stood up, going on about my clear cognitive decline, citing the video, the medical report, and Brooke's observations. Each word landed like a hammer, painting me as a confused old burden. Frank sat beside me, his hands laced and shaking with anger, but he stayed silent. I laid my hand over his and gave a small shake of my head. We had to stay calm. When it was our turn, my lawyer, the one Monica recommended, stood. He said clearly, Your Honor, what they've presented is a facade. The real evidence shows Mrs. Ruth Delaney is fully competent. More importantly, these adult children are scheming to take her assets. He placed 3 files on the table: the independent lab report, the dining room recording, and Dr. Lorraine's prepared testimony. The room's energy shifted. Tyler and Brooke sat up straight, faces tight. When the court allowed the audio to be played, the room went silent. Brooke's voice came through clear, sweet, and vicious. Just a few more times and Dr. Benton will have enough to conclude. Then Mom will be legally protected. The phrase, "give her medicine so she gets more confused," sliced through their lies like a blade. I saw Brooke go paper white. Tyler clenched his jaw and slapped his thigh. In that moment, I knew the line had blown open. There was no going back for them. The judge stared at the two of them, voice low. "Do you have any explanation for this recording?" Brooke stammered. Tyler tried a weak smile. "It was just kidding around at dinner, Your Honor. We meant memory supplements." A short, derisive laugh escaped Monica's side, and she quickly covered her mouth. The judge frowned, but his eyes shifted back to me. "Mrs. Delaney?" he asked. "Can you speak for yourself about your condition?" I stood up, back straight, voice clear. "Your Honor, I'm 66 years old. I still remember every detail of my life, from the day I married Frank to the day Lily was born. I still do the grocery shopping, cook, and manage expenses. The only thing that has made me confused is the smell of sleeping pills in the water my own son and daughter-in-law gave me. And I have the evidence in my hand." The courtroom buzzed, whispers rising like a wave. Tyler lowered his head, and Brooke trembled, too afraid to look up. The hearing ended without a final decision, but the judge temporarily denied the guardianship petition. We would return within 2 weeks with full evidence. Stepping out of the courthouse, the late afternoon sun hit the stone steps. I took a deep breath, feeling my chest lighten. Frank put his arm around my shoulders and whispered, "You just showed the whole world how strong you are." I looked up at the sky and answered softly, "Not yet, Frank. This is only the beginning. They'll thrash around. And we have to be ready." Inside me, the exploding line had been crossed. Now it was an uncompromising fight to reclaim the truth, our dignity, and the home we built over a lifetime. The 2 weeks waiting for the next court date crawled by like a century. Every morning I walked in my rose garden to keep my mind steady, but I knew Tyler and Brooke were surely plotting a counterattack. They would never give up easily. One afternoon, Monica stopped by with the local paper. On the front page was a headline, "Young couple seeks to protect confused elderly mother." A family tragedy in Austin. Below it were photos of Tyler and Brooke, eyes sad, like two devoted children sacrificing for their mother. I stared at the paper, blood rushing to my face. "They've turned me into a puppet in front of the whole community," I muttered. Monica set her hand on the table, voice firm. "This is when you step into the light. They chose public opinion as a weapon. We'll show the public the truth." A few days later, Monica arranged for me to speak at a community gathering at the local church, where many neighbors and longtime friends meet. I wore a simple navy blue dress and the pearl necklace Frank gave me on our wedding day. When I walked in, many had read the article. Their eyes held a mix of curiosity and pity. I stood on a small wooden platform, took a deep breath, and began, "I know there are rumors about my condition. People are saying I'm confused and can't take care of myself. But I want you to look me in the eye today. I still remember every face in this room and every memory I've shared with you over the past 40 years. The room fell silent. I continued, steady. "What makes me foggy isn't age, it's the sleeping pills slipped into my water, and I have proof." I held up the lab report for all to see. Monica turned on a speaker and played a short recording. Brooke's voice rang out clearly, "Give her medicine so she gets more confused." A wave of whispers swept through. A few old friends stepped closer, their anger turning toward Tyler and Brooke, who were also there, standing in the back, their faces draining as if their masks had been torn off. Tyler stepped forward, trying to keep his voice calm. "Don't believe these lies, it's all staged. My mother is being manipulated." I cut him off. eyes locked on his. "Tyler, I taught you that the truth doesn't need anyone to manipulate it. It stands on its own. And today, it's right here for everyone to see." Applause rose from the older neighbors who've known me all my life. Brooke flushed red and tugged her husband back. After the gathering, I sat in the car with Monica and Frank. My heart still raced, but a new fire had been lit inside me. Monica smiled. "You just won back the public. Next time in court, they won't have the cover of being dutiful children. Now they're the ones under suspicion." I nodded and looked out the window. The Texas sunset burned red like fire, and I saw it clearly. The line had truly exploded. No more halfway. From now on, the battle would be open, fierce, and I had to stand firm to the end. That night, I wrote in my journal, "They want me confused, but I've never been clearer. They want to take my voice, but now the community has heard it. My son betrayed me. My daughter-in-law staged it, but I still have the truth, Frank, Monica, and Lily. And with that, I have enough to keep going." I closed the journal, feeling lighter. The Texas night was quiet, only crickets chirping, but inside me, the fire of resolve burned bright. After the first hearing, I knew this fight no longer lived within our four walls. It had stepped into the public square where there is law, police, doctors, and reports in black ink. I couldn't turn back. On Monday morning, Monica took me to the Travis County Sheriff's Office. The building wasn't large, but its red brick walls and the American flag snapping in the wind felt solemn. I walked in with nerves, but my steps were steady. Inside, the air was cool. Coffee mingled with the rapid clacking of keyboards. A middle-aged officer with a nameplate reading O'Connor greeted us. His eyes were direct, his face trustworthy. "Mrs. Delaney, I've been briefed. Please, have a seat. Tell me everything from the start," I began. The bitter water, the leading questions, the Sunday meal, the recording. When I mentioned Brooke slipping up and saying, "Give her medicine so she gets more confused," O'Connor frowned and scribbled fast. When I handed over Dr. Lorraine's analysis, he looked up, voice firm. "This is significant evidence. We'll open an investigation, but prepare yourself, the process can be intense. Tyler and Brooke will push back hard." I exhaled and answered, "I'm ready. I need the truth out in the open, and I need Tyler's daughter, my granddaughter, out of a dishonest home." Leaving the station, the April sun was harsh, but I felt lighter. I knew I'd laid the first brick in a solid wall against their scheme. The next day, I went to the General Hospital, where Dr. Lorraine had scheduled a full exam. I entered a bright white clinic under fluorescent lights. Dr. Simmons, a salt and pepper-haired man with a steady voice, shook my hand firmly. "Mrs. Ruth, I've been briefed on your case. Today we'll run a full workup, memory, reflexes, health markers. I want a transparent record to protect you in court." I nodded. The tests began. He read me a list of words. Flower, clock, pencil, window. A few minutes later he asked again, and I repeated them exactly. He asked me to draw a clock showing 11:10. I drew it quickly, the circle sure and smooth. Then he gave me a few simple math questions. I didn't miss one. At the end, Simmons looked up and smiled. "You're fully lucid. I'll write a clear report stating there are no signs of dementia. Frankly, you're sharper than many younger patients I've seen." Tears stung my eyes. I never thought I'd live to prove to the world that I'm not crazy, but now each word of that report would be my shield. That afternoon I sat with Monica and Frank in the living room. On the table were 3 files, the lab report, the audio recording, and Dr. Simmons's statement. Monica tapped the table, voice resolute. "With this much, they can't keep fabricating. But I won't rule out them trying to flip the script, maybe bribing another witness or smearing you." "We have to stay one step ahead." Frank sighed, but his eyes were bright. "At least this time Ruth has allies. They won't back her into a corner so easily." Looked at my husband, then at Monica, and felt a new confidence rise. For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. But that night, when the house was quiet, I sat by the window under the oak's shadow. I knew every step forward was another battle. The police would investigate, the doctors would write, the lawyers would argue, and I knew Tyler and Brooke wouldn't accept defeat easily. I added one more line to my secret journal. Today I filed evidence with the police and have a doctor on my side, but I also know the desperate, driven by greed, thrash hardest. I must be ready for the next explosion. On the day of the formal trial, I walked into the courtroom with shaky legs, but my head held high. The ceiling soared, light poured onto long wooden benches, the seriousness almost suffocating. Shoes echoed on the floor, each step like a drum pushing my heart. Frank walked beside me, his warm hand gripping mine as if to pass me strength. Monica was already seated in the back row, eyes sharp. Across the aisle, Tyler and Brooke appeared calm, but tension flickered in their eyes. They wore dark clothes, posing as dutiful children, but I knew how thin that mask was. The judge, a gray-haired man with a deep, steady voice, called the session to order. Tyler and Brooke's attorney went first, talking at length about an elderly mother no longer lucid. They played the video of me pretending to repeat the same question. A few whispers rippled, a few heads shook. My heart twinged, but I breathed deep and told myself, wait. The truth will come out. When it was our turn, my attorney stood and spoke clearly. Your Honor, these videos show carefully curated moments. We ask to present the real evidence. He submitted the independent forensic report proving high-dose zolpidem sleep medication in my drinking sample. Then he called Dr. Lorraine to the stand. The silver-haired woman stepped up, calm but unwavering. Mrs. Delaney, he asked, can you describe your condition yourself? I stood up, back straight, voice firm. Your Honor, I'm 66. I still remember every detail of my life, from the day I married Frank to the day Lily was born. I still do the grocery shopping, cook, and manage our expenses. The only thing that made me confused was the smell of sleeping pills in the glass of water my own son and daughter-in-law gave me. And I have the evidence, the courtroom murmured, whispers rising like a wave. Tyler dropped his head, and Brooke shook so hard she couldn't look up. The hearing ended with no final ruling, but the judge temporarily denied the guardianship request. We would return within 2 weeks with full evidence. Walking out of court, the late afternoon sun hit the stone steps. I took a deep breath, like a weight lifting off my chest. Frank put his arm around my shoulders and whispered, "You just showed the world how strong you are." I looked up at the sky and said softly, "Not yet, Frank. This is only the beginning. They'll keep fighting. And we have to be ready." Inside me, the breaking point had been crossed. Now it was an uncompromising fight to reclaim the truth, our dignity, and the home we built over a lifetime. Those 2 weeks waiting for the next hearing crawled by like a century. Every morning I walked the rose garden, trying to keep my mind clear, but I knew Tyler and Brooke were planning a counterattack. They never give up easily. One afternoon, Monica stopped by with the local paper. On the front page, a headline read, "Young couple seeks to protect confused elderly mother." A family tragedy in Austin. Below it were photos of Tyler and Brooke, eyes sad, like two devoted children sacrificing for their mother. I stared at the paper, blood rushing to my face. "They turned me into a puppet in front of the community," I muttered. Monica set her hand on the table, voice hard. "This is when you step into the light. They chose public opinion as a weapon. We'll show the public the truth." A few days later, Monica arranged for me to speak at a community gathering at the local church. That's where many neighbors and old friends meet. I wore a simple navy dress and the pearl necklace Frank gave me on our wedding day. When I walked in, many had read the article, eyes mixed with curiosity and pity. I stood on the small wooden platform, took a deep breath, and spoke. "I know there are rumors about my condition. People say I'm confused and can't take care of myself." But I want you to look me in the eye today. I still remember every face in this room, every memory I've shared with you over 40 years. The room went silent. I continued, steady. What makes me foggy isn't age, it's sleeping pills slipped into my water, and I have proof. I held up the lab report so everyone could see. Monica turned on a speaker and played a short recording. Brooke's voice came through, clear. Give her medicine so she gets more confused. A wave of whispers spread. A few old friends stepped closer, anger turning toward Tyler and Brooke, who were there, standing in the back, faces pale as their masks slipped. Tyler stepped forward, trying to stay calm. Don't believe these lies, it's staged. My mother is being coached. I cut him off, eyes locked on him. Tyler, I taught you that the truth doesn't need coaching. It stands on its own. And today, it's right here for everyone to see. Applause rose from the older neighbors who've known me all my life. Brooke flushed and pulled her husband back. After the gathering, I sat in the car with Monica and Frank. My heart pounded, but a new fire had been lit. Monica smiled. You just won back the public. Next time in court, they won't have the dutiful children cover. Now they're under suspicion. I nodded, looking out the window. The Texas sunset burned red like fire, and I saw it clearly. The line had truly been crossed. No more. Halfway. From now on, the fight would be public, fierce, and I had to stand firm to the end. That night, I wrote in my journal, they want me confused, but I've never been clearer. They want to take my voice, but now the community has heard it. My son betrayed me. My daughter-in-law staged it, but I still have the truth, Frank, Monica, and Lily. And with that, I can keep going. I closed the journal, feeling lighter. The Texas night was quiet, only crickets chirping, but inside me, the fire of resolve burned bright. After the first hearing, I knew this battle no longer stayed within four walls. It had stepped into the open where there is law, police, doctors, and clear written reports. I couldn't turn back. On Monday morning, Monica took me to the Travis County Sheriff's Office. The building wasn't large, but the red brick walls and the American flag snapping in the wind felt solemn. I walked in, nerves tight, but my steps steady. Inside, the air was cool coffee and the rapid clack of keyboards. A middle-aged officer named O'Connor greeted us. His eyes were direct, his face trustworthy. Mrs. Delaney, I've been briefed. Please, sit. Tell me everything from the beginning, I began. The bitter water, the leading questions, the Sunday meal, the recording. When I mentioned Brooke slipping and saying, give her medicine so she gets more confused, O'Connor frowned and wrote fast. When I handed over Dr. Lorraine's analysis, he looked up, voice firm. This is significant evidence. We'll open a case, but be ready, the process can be intense. Tyler and Brooke will push back hard. I exhaled and said, I'm ready. I need the truth out there, and I need my granddaughter, Tyler's daughter, out of that dishonesty. Leaving the station, the April sun was sharp, but I felt lighter. I knew I'd set the first brick in a solid wall against their scheme. The next day, I went to the General Hospital, where Dr. Lorraine scheduled a full exam. I entered a bright white clinic under fluorescent lights. Dr. Simmons, a salt-and-pepper-haired man with a steady voice, shook my hand firmly. Mrs. Ruth, I've been briefed. Today we'll test memory, reflexes, and health markers. I want a clear record to protect you in court. I nodded. The tests began. He read, flower, clock, pencil, window. A few minutes later he asked again, and I repeated them exactly. He asked me to draw a clock at 11:10. I drew it quickly, the circle smooth and sure. He gave simple math problems. I missed none. At the end, Simmons smiled. You're fully lucid. I'll write a report stating there are no signs of dementia. Honestly, you're sharper than many younger patients. Tears stung my eyes. I never thought I'd live to prove to the world I'm not crazy, but now every word of that report would be my shield. That afternoon, I sat with Monica and Frank in the living room. On the table were 3 files: the lab report, the audio, and Dr. Simmons's statement. Monica tapped the table, resolute. With this much, they can't keep spinning lies. But they may try to flip the script, bribe a witness, smear you. We have to stay a step ahead. Frank sighed, eyes bright. At least this time Ruth has allies. They won't corner her so easily. I looked at my husband, then at Monica, and felt a new confidence rise. For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. But that night, with the house quiet, I sat by the window staring at the oak's shadow. I knew every step was a new battle. Police would investigate, doctors would write, lawyers would argue. And I knew Tyler and Brooke wouldn't accept defeat easily. I added one more line to my secret journal. Today I filed evidence with the police and have a doctor on my side, but I also know the desperate thrash hardest. I must be ready for the next blast. On the final trial day, Austin's sky was heavy, gray clouds pressing down. I sat in the courtroom, nerves tight enough to hear every heartbeat. Frank sat close, gripping my hand. Monica behind us, eyes fixed on the bench. Tyler and Brooke walked in pale, eyes dark with circles. They didn't look so confident anymore. The past days, medical reports, the recording, Lily's testimony had cracked the dutiful child mask. The judge struck the gavel, voice even. After reviewing all evidence, witness testimony, and expert reports, the court rules the guardianship petition by Tyler and Brooke Delaney is denied. Mrs. Ruth Delaney is fully competent and has full legal capacity. The room seemed to burst at that moment. I felt my shoulders lighten as if I'd dropped a boulder I'd carried for years. Frank leaned in and whispered, "You did it, Ruth." But the judge wasn't done. He turned to Tyler and Brooke, voice stern. Based on evidence of harmful conduct, the court grants temporary guardianship of the minor, Lily Delaney, to her grandmother, Mrs. Ruth Delaney, until a long-term family court decision is issued. During this time, the parents may have supervised visitation only. Whispers rippled through the room. I looked at Tyler, rage flared in his eyes while Brooke covered her face with performative tears. I wasn't afraid anymore. This ruling didn't just protect me. It freed Lily from a toxic, deceitful home. That afternoon, when we brought Lily home, she ran into the rose garden, laughing like a bird set free. I stood on the porch, watching her small figure, tears spilling. Frank wrapped an arm around me, warm and steady. "Maybe this is the real reward, Ruth. Not just justice for you, but a childhood for Lily." Lily ran back, hugging me, her voice innocent but strong. "Grandma, I get to stay with you now, right? I don't have to hear things I don't understand anymore." I held her tight and whispered, "That's right, sweetheart. You're safe now, and I'll always be here." The next day, I began something I'd long wanted but never had the calm to do, planting a new garden in the backyard. I chose a patch beside the roses, where morning sun pours in. I wanted a fresh start to sow seeds of trust and healing. Lily trotted behind me with a little shovel. Frank hauled fresh soil, bucket by bucket. We dug holes together and planted lavender, sunflowers, and a few tomatoes Lily insisted on. As we worked, Lily giggled. "Grandma, I'm calling this the Garden of Hope. Every flower will be like a new day for us." I smiled, wiping my brow. "You're right. This garden will remind me that even after the darkest days, flowers still bloom." In the days that followed, the house settled into a warm rhythm. Mornings, I brewed tea, Frank read the paper, and Lily did homework by the window. Afternoons, we tended the new garden. Each time I smelled the damp earth and saw Lily's little hands dirty and happy, my heart filled with gratitude. I was no longer just a woman who'd protected her assets and dignity. I was a real grandmother, responsible for nurturing both a child's heart and childhood. That night, after Lily fell asleep, I sat in the garden under the moonlight shining on the fresh rose. I thought about the ruling, the temporary guardianship. I knew a long road lay ahead, paperwork, pushback from Tyler and Brooke, but now I wasn't afraid. The law stood with me, and more importantly, love led the way. I wrote one more line in my journal. Today, justice spoke my name. But the greatest joy isn't the win, it's Lily running in the garden, her laughter like bells. Her future is the garden I must tend with all my heart. Outside, a soft night wind rustled the leaves, like a promise. From now on, this home won't be a place of scheming, but of love and hope. 6 months have passed since the court ruling, long enough for wounds to ease, short enough for me to remember every detail, every look, every word that cut deep. I can't and won't forget. Peace doesn't mean forgetting, it means living on with memories etched into your bones. Each morning, I wake as sunlight slips through the window and birds sing in the garden. Lily sits at the kitchen table, brown hair a little messy, mumbling her spelling words. Frank pours my coffee. The aroma blends with damp earth from the new beds. Those small sounds used to seem ordinary, now they're a gift. The garden is thriving. Purple lavender, tall sunflowers, and Lily's tomato row heavy with bright red fruit. She beams. "This is our red feast, Grandma." I laugh, my heart swelling with the simple joy I'd lost for so long. But even in the quiet, I don't forget the bitter months. I still keep my journal. I still fold away the medical report and the recording, not to cling to pain, but to remind myself I stood up and I wasn't broken. I want Lily, when she grows up, to know her grandmother was betrayed but didn't lose faith in justice or in herself. Tyler and Brooke are silent now. The court hasn't made a final decision on long-term custody, but I have temporary guardianship of Lily. She sleeps safely here, plays in the yard, and grows up with me and Frank. That matters more than anything. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this present belongs to us. One afternoon under the oak, I asked Lily, "Do you regret testifying?" She shook her head, eyes shining. "No, Grandma. I told the truth, and the truth is never wrong." Her answer left me quiet. An 8-year-old understood what many adults never admit. I hugged her and whispered, "Peace isn't forgetting, it's learning to live with the truth, sweetheart." I write this now not to reopen wounds, but to share with anyone who's faced betrayal inside their own family. If you're dismissed, doubted, or pushed into a dark corner, remember, there is still light if you hold to your faith. I know many of you listening may have felt belittled by your own children or used, or felt your voice was too small to be heard. Please don't stay silent. Even a trembling voice like Lily's on the stand can turn a courtroom. And before I close, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for sitting with me through each tear-filled mile of this road. Your presence makes my story more than a private wound. It becomes a message to every heart that's been hurt. We are not alone. If this story touched you, please leave a comment and share your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep walking new journeys together. Thank you for listening, for caring, and for staying with me to the very end. Your love and connection are the peaceful garden I'm blessed to keep tending in this life.